All right, good morning. Welcome into the Out of Bounds Show, ESPN 105.9 The Zone. Brought to you by Kessler Prime and the Renaissance. Great steaks and seafood, KesslerPrime.com to make a reservation. I'm your host, Bo Bounds. We're live in the Bank Plus studio. We welcome in Steve Robertson, JeansPage.com, 247 Sports. Steve joins us on the Farm Bureau Insurance guest line. All right, Steve, let's talk portal and Levy, and they've been able to retain some guys. Give me your top. I mean, I'm thinking it's going to be Kelly Jones and Isaac, but you can rip through 4 or 5 guys, however you want to do it. Give me your top retention guys that Levy and Butler and them have been able to retain to date on the Mississippi State football team. Steve?
Well, I think you probably got the two you were most worried about. Anthony Evans is another one, even though he hadn't made a formal proclamation. We feel pretty confident about him hanging in there. Of course, we'll, breathe a lot better once the 16th comes and goes and the portal window closes. But, because sometimes things get a little squirrely there at the end. But you're right. It's not just about player acquisition. It's about player retention. And I feel like State's got a good nucleus of players returning. And so you got to build around them, and that process is still ongoing.
All right. So, Anthony Evans, what do you put, 99% on that?
Oh, yeah, I'd say, I expect him back, and I think it's one of these things too. I think you've gotten so deep in the weeds now and so many spots have been taken up. I think if you were going to go, you'd want to get in earlier than this, it's dead period begins today, so the dead period's going to run for 3 days while the AFCA convention's going on. Then you can resume official visits on the 15th, and then the portal closes on the 16th for everybody other than the players in the FBS National Championship game. They've got to the 24th. And so to wait this late is almost kind of doing a disservice to yourself.
Okay. Who are you? Give me 2 or 3 of the guys that have committed that they've gotten in the portal that you believe can be legit SEC players and starters day one.
Yeah, that's a good question, and that's a question that everybody has, right? Because you've gotten some guys that are depth pieces, right? It's not just about getting starters. You got to get some guys to kind of replace some of those players that processed out. Guys that just didn't develop. But you got 14 right now. Amari Williams is a guy that I don't think people are talking enough about. He is a legitimate edge. Actually, has played tight end and edge in college. But he is going to profile as an edge at Mississippi State. 6'4", 240-pound, got a lot of little bursts with him. And I think he has some twitch that maybe State didn't have at the edge last year. L.J. Prudhomme is a guy that we like a lot. And matter of fact, State nearly got him out of high school. It basically came down to Arkansas and Mississippi State. But Sam Pittman was really involved in that one, and Sam won out. And LJ, I'll still tell you, man, Sam's his guy. And love Sam, and I really believe if they'd retained Sam, LJ would have stayed. But he's the guy that I think will work at one of the guard spots and be a starter for you next year. And then Marquise Johnson, that guy can absolutely fly. He's one of the most athletic wide receivers in the portal, and that's who State opened the class with. And, of course, this cornerback room is going to look completely different. Yeah, it was the thing last year. You had Kelly Jones, but you didn't have a lot of people that profiled like him physically. And Diego Brumfield played on the other side, did the best he could. But, the reality of it is he's not near as lean and long as some of those guys. We look at that room now, and you just kind of run it off, man. There's a lot of guys that, look a lot like Kelly Jones. Maybe they don't have that same level of athleticism, but that room is going to be a lot more athletic than it was last year.
Steve Robertson, Jeans Page, 247 Sports. He joins us on the Farm Bureau Insurance guest line. This is 105.9 The Zone, ESPN. Mississippi State trying to get going. Year 3 of Levy. They won 5 games, but were 1-8 on the way out or something like that. And it was post Northern Illinois. It was a challenge to say the least. Steve, they decided to go another direction with Luke Work, starting offensive lineman out of the Memphis area. And Luke is now going to Missouri. Did that surprise you?
It did a little bit, to be honest with you. And quite honestly, I think when you look at the dynamics of the one portal window recruiting phase, right? Because last year it's like, well, if you didn't get it in December, maybe you can clean it up in the spring. Well, you don't have that option anymore. As a result, we're seeing premium position guys go for almost double what they did last year. And so even if you think, okay, we're going to increase our budget by this, well, the asking price for guys has gone up considerably. And so I think when, not that these numbers will be made public, but I still believe they should be. But I think if you go back and you look, you would say, you know what, you probably could have gotten Luke Work to stay for less money than it took to replace him. And those are the things you got to work through, and everything is a gamble. But Luke Work's a guy that he's a legacy guy and started the year a little bit banged up. But I think people forget how well he played last year at left tackle as a true freshman. And this year you try to make a guard out of him. And he was a little bit banged up and had some struggles at times and, moved around multiple times. But, I would have liked to have kept him. I just think, number one, I think he's good enough to play here. And there were some people that, were suggesting that he wasn't, and then he goes in the portal and he gets offers and official visit invites from Oklahoma, Missouri, and South Carolina. So if he's good enough to play elsewhere in the league, chances are he's good enough to play here.
Yeah. Steve Robertson on the Out of Bounds show. Jeff Levy going into year 3. All right, the running back room is Fluff and who?
Well, you got Fluff and you got Gayton and you got J.J. Hill and, Cooper Crosby and Colin Wilson. I mean, that's a position that State did not have to worry about going into the portal. I think you're in great shape there. Matter of fact, I think you probably look at that and say that's probably your best room on the offensive side of the football. And, Fluff, expecting him to be 100% when spring opens. But, there's a lot of depth there. I mean, I think when you look at the talent in that room for 2026, it exceeds what you had in 2025, and you felt pretty good about the room then. But, I'm interested to see how much J.J. Hill and Cooper will play as true freshmen. Levy has kind of run a 2-back system, but he kind of won a third and a fourth guy occasionally. So I think ideally maybe you'd like to redshirt those guys, but there's a part of me I think you've got to get their feet wet because Fluff's probably going pro next year.
Okay, everybody's asking about the offensive line. I've got a minute. You just won't know it. How do you look at it? You really won't know anything until you see them play live in games, or do you think that they're upgrading?
Well, I think it's too early to make that determination, but we're expecting 2 offensive line commitments to announce today. One of those guys I do expect to be a starter for this team next year, and the other one's probably a 2 deeper. He's a younger guy that you guys are somewhat familiar with, but I think he'll fill a spot for a guy like maybe Luke Work, a guy that's an outgoing player. But we expect a couple more. But you feel good about the interior, but where State's got to get a couple of athletic tackles. Jalen Matthews is a guy from Florida State's got a lot of potential, but he hadn't played much ball. You need to get some guys with some snaps under their belt to man those tackle positions.
All right, on the way out, I've got less than a minute. Anything else that I didn't hit?
Well, I think, when you begin to look at this defensive line group, I think you're probably a defensive tackle away from feeling much better about that group. And I think that's coming pretty soon, too.
All right. And Arnett will make the defense better, without a doubt. It's just how much better. All right. We'll do this again later in the week. Thanks, Steve.
See you, bud.
GenesPage.com, 247 Sports. We'll update. We hadn't had Steve on in over a week. Maybe I should bring him on every day this week. We're live in the Bank Plus studio. Tom Luganbill at 8:30 on the Farm Bureau Insurance Guest Line.